Okay, so here's something to think about. We live in an age where the average person consumes 5 times more information daily than they did 50 years ago. But instead of making us smarter or more insightful, it feels like we're losing the ability to think deeply. Why is that?
That's such a striking observation, and I think it's because access to information isn't the same as engaging with it. Just because something crosses your path doesn't mean it becomes part of your thinking, and we've started to confuse exposure with understanding.
That's a really important distinction. We assume that if we've read something, skimmed an article, or watched a video, we've absorbed it. But real understanding takes more than that. It takes time, focus, and effort.
Exactly. And it's not just about time, it's about staying with an idea long enough to let it develop. That's where things start to break down today. Attention doesn't stay in one place anymore, it's constantly shifting, and that's a huge problem.
Right, because when attention moves too quickly, thinking becomes shallow. Let's define that for a second. What do you think shallow thinking really is?
Shallow thinking is when you recognise an idea but don't explore it. You might understand just enough to feel familiar with something, but not enough to see the deeper connections or implications. It's surface level engagement, and it creates this illusion of knowledge.
It's like you feel informed, but you're not actually clear. And clarity is what we're missing because clarity requires structure.
Exactly. And structure only comes from depth. You can't build a solid understanding of something if you're just skimming the surface.
So let's flip this around. What does deep thinking look like?
Deep thinking is about sustained attention applied to a single idea. It's staying with something long enough to understand not just what it is, but how it connects to everything else. And it's not just about the amount of time you spend, it's about continuity, unbroken attention.
And that's the exact opposite of what our modern environments encourage, isn't it?
Completely. Our environments are designed to interrupt us. They're built to introduce new stimuli, to keep us moving from one thing to the next. It's all about grabbing attention, not holding it.
So instead of following one idea all the way through to its conclusion,
you're constantly jumping between fragments, and those fragments never fully connect.
That's such a vivid way of putting it. And when the fragments don't connect, your thinking doesn't fully form either.
Exactly. It's like trying to read a book, but you're only reading random sentences from different chapters. You never get the full story.
Let's make this practical. What does shallow thinking feel like on a day-to-day basis?
It feels like constant input without resolution. You're consuming content, recognizing ideas, reacting to things, maybe even agreeing with them, but nothing really settles. There's no sense of completion. Everything remains partial, half-formed thoughts, surface-level understanding.
That explains why so many people can talk about a lot of topics, but struggle to explain them clearly.
Exactly, because clear explanations require structure, and structure only comes from depth. If you haven't gone deep, you can't articulate your thoughts clearly.
That's interesting because it suggests that a lot of communication problems are actually rooted in thinking problems.
In many cases, yes. If your thinking is fragmented, your communication will be too.
Let's go a level deeper. What happens over time if someone primarily operates in shallow thinking?
They lose the ability to think deeply. Not permanently, but functionally. The brain adapts to the level of demand placed on it. If you consistently operate at the surface, that becomes your default mode.
So depth starts to feel difficult.
And uncomfortable. Deep thinking requires effort, patience, and a willingness to sit with uncertainty. If you're used to constant stimulation, that kind of focus feels like friction.
So the mind starts to avoid it.
Yes, it looks for something easier, quicker, more immediately rewarding, and that takes you right back to shallow inputs.
Which creates a kind of loop.
Exactly. Shallow inputs reduce your tolerance for depth. Reduced tolerance for depth makes shallow inputs more appealing. Over time, you get stuck at the surface.
That's such a powerful cycle. And largely invisible, right? Because it feels normal.
It does. It feels like the way things are supposed to be.
Let's connect this to something people experience all the time. Why does it feel harder to read a book now than it used to?
Because reading requires deep thinking. You have to stay with a single thread, follow it, build on it. If your attention is used to switching between things, it resists staying in one place.
So, even if the book is good,
your mind drifts, not because the content is boring, but because it's demanding a level of attention that your mind isn't used to anymore.
That's such an important reframe. It's not the book, it's the attention.
Exactly. It's not about the quality of the content, it's about the condition of your focus.
Let's talk about the consequences. What does shallow thinking actually cost people?
Clarity, decision quality, original thought, understanding. The list goes on because everything builds on thinking. If your thinking is shallow, everything else becomes shallow too.
So decisions become reactive.
Yes. They're based on immediate inputs rather than deeper analysis. That leads to short-term outcomes and often repeated mistakes because nothing is fully understood.
And there's also something about originality here. It feels like a lot of ideas are just repeated without being developed.
That's a direct result of shallow thinking. People encounter ideas, recognise them, and then repeat them without adding anything new. Originality requires depth. You have to sit with an idea, question it, connect it, extend it.
And that takes time.
And uninterrupted attention.
Which brings us back to the core issue.
Always.
So if someone is listening to this and thinking, that sounds like me. I consume a lot, but I don't feel clear. What's the shift?
The shift is recognising that input is not the goal. Thinking is the goal. It's about valuing depth over volume. Less content, more engagement.
But that's not easy, is it? Because the default environment pushes you toward volume.
It's not easy. It requires intention and discipline. You have to actively choose depth over distraction.
So how does someone start rebuilding their ability to think deeply?
By creating space for it. Not forcing it, but allowing it. That means reducing inputs, staying with one idea longer, and resisting the urge to switch.
That sounds simple.
But it's not easy. It goes against the grain of how most of us live now. It's a deliberate act, a conscious decision to stay, to go deeper, to finish your thoughts instead of abandoning them.
And over time?
The ability comes back. It was never gone. It was just underused.
So, to sum this up, shallow thinking isn't a lack of intelligence.
No, it's a result of fragmented attention.
And deep thinking isn't reserved for a select few.
It's something anyone can do if they create the right conditions.
Conditions that are increasingly rare.
But still available, if you choose them.
So what's the one takeaway here?
Don't mistake exposure for understanding, and don't confuse familiarity with clarity.
Because they're not the same.
Not even close.
We'll leave it there.
And next time, we'll dive into what it actually looks like to change this dynamic.
Not just understanding it,
but doing something about it.
See you then. If you want to learn more about yourself, visit www.modernlifeskillsacademy.com. You'll find more podcasts, audiobooks, videos, blogs, and a lot more to help you keep developing and moving forward.